All right, section 8.2, applying exponent properties involving quotients. So we are going to learn what happens when you divide powers with the same base. So just like yesterday, you have to have the same base for this to work. And how you divide is you subtract your exponents. So quotient means divide, and whenever you have to divide exponents, you subtract. So they have to have the same base, and you would take a, and it would be 5 minus 3, which would give you a squared. Okay, so this is that quotient property. So a to the m over a to the n would equal a to the m minus n. So a few examples of that. 8 to the 10th over 8 to the 4th, you would subtract them and have 8 to the 10 minus 4, which is 8 to the 6th power. 6 to the 11th over 6 to the 5th, you would have 6 to the 11 minus 5, which is 6 to the 6th power. Negative 3 to the 9th over negative 3 to the 7th would be negative 3 to the 9 minus 7, which is negative 3 squared. Okay, so with this problem, we are going to combine properties that we have already learned. So first in the numerator, whenever you multiply exponents, remember you add them. So this is going to become 5 to the 12th over 5 to the 7th. So now I need to subtract them. So 5 to the 12 minus 7 power, which would be 5 to the 5th power. Okay, so again, in this problem, we are going to combine multiple properties. So in the numerator, I need to add. So I would get 9 to the 7th over 9 squared. And then I would subtract those to get 9 to the 5th. Okay, so here I have some variables. I have 1 over x to the 4th times x to the 6th. So in order to make the x to the 6th power a fraction, I can put it over 1. And then if I combine these together, I would have x to the 6th over x to the 4th. And then I would subtract that, and I would get x squared. Okay, so the same process here. I need to put y to the 8th over 1, combine them together, get y to the 8th over y to the 5th, and subtract them to get y to the 3rd. Okay, so the next property is another example of quotient property. This is power of a quotient. So if you have a quotient raised to an exponent, you can separate that and have each part of the quotient raised to the exponent. So we're going to practice that. So x over y to the 3rd power, you can split that apart and make this x to the 3rd over y to the 3rd. Okay, so negative 2 over x raised to the 4th power. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to have negative 2 to the 4th over x to the 4th. So then I'm going to actually go ahead and calculate negative 2 to the 4th and get 16 over x to the 4th. Okay, negative 7 over y squared. Okay, so notice the negative sign is in front, and it's not really assigned to the numerator or denominator. You have to pick one of them to assign it to, and you can't give it to both of them because a negative over a negative would give you a positive. So I'm going to assign it to the 7 and make negative 7 squared over y squared. And then I would calculate that and get positive 49 over y squared. Okay, so now we are going to start combining multiple properties. So here we have an example of power to a power and the quotient power property. So power to a power, you multiply. So x squared to the third over y to the third. So I actually have to multiply that 2 times 3 to get x to the 6th over y to the third. Okay, so same here, we're combining multiple properties. So I'm going to write all this out. So 4 to the third times x squared to the third over 5 to the third times y to the third. So I'm going to calculate these. So calculate 4 to the third, you get 64. And then I have to use power to a power and take 2 times 3 to get x to the 6th. Over, and then calculate 5 to the third, which is 125, and then I would have y to the third. Okay, and then you would want to check and make sure, does 64 over 125 simplify? And if it could simplify, you need to simplify it. Okay. First, with this problem, we are going to tackle what's on the left before we do anything with the right. So I'm going to take a squared to the 5th power. That has to get multiplied to give you a to the 10th. And then I would have over y to the 5th. And that is times 1 over a squared. Okay, so since we have the same base of a, I can go ahead and take a to the 10th divided by a squared. So that would be a to the 10 minus 2 over y to the 5th. So in the end, I would end up with a to the 8th over y to the 5th. Okay, last problem. So again, I have parentheses around the fraction on the left. I need to go ahead and take care of that first. So I'm going to have 2 to the third, x to the third, over 3 to the third, y to the third, times y to the 5th, over 16. So I need to go through and simplify that. So 2 to the third equals 8. So I'm going to combine them all together. So 8x to the third, y to the 5th, over, and then 3 to the third equals 27. So 27y to the third times 16. Okay, so the next thing I would do would be to multiply 27 by 16. So I would end up with 8x to the third, y to the 5th, over 432 y to the third. Okay, so the next thing I need to do is subtract my y to the 5th over y to the third. So that's going to give me y squared. So I'm going to have 8x cubed y squared over 432. Okay, so the last thing is to see, can 8 over 432 be simplified? And 432 can actually be divided by 8. So I'm going to end up with x cubed y squared over, and when you divide 432 by 8, you get 54. Okay, so for your assignments for this, you're going to have page 498, a textbook assignment.